Ladies and gentlemen of the Twin Tiers, good evening. I'm your PhD of politics, Dr. Stephen Coleman, and welcome to my 30th Political Pundit Night, live exclusively on mytwintiers.com. The subjects for tonight's cybercast: Black Success in America and the Twin Tiers. A distinguished panel of Black leaders will be talking about their success, how it might relate to young people, and how it relates and more generally to both the Black and white communities. Our distinguished group this evening includes Georgia Verdier, the Elmira Corning NAACP president, Crystal Jubilee, director of nurse education at Corning Community College, Jerome Emanuel. Jerome is director of lending at the Alternatives Federal Credit Union and member of the New York State Regional Economic Development Council. Reverend Holly Strickland, pastor of the Webb Mills United Methodist Church. Dr. Richard Dozier, author, commentator, and a former Corning Community College vice president. Anita Lewis, the chief development officer of the Economic Opportunity Program. Astra Titus, attorney, law and social policy analyst and expert. We have also Willie Owens, community activist, member of the New York State Democratic Committee and a Jefferson Award winner, and Jamal Malik, chair of the Chemung County Democratic Committee. Now, after this discussion from Black leaders about their success, we're going to have two white leaders at the end of the program talk about what they may have learned from the discussion. Those two leaders, Elmira Mayor Dan Mandel and veteran journalist Jeff Murray of the Star Gazette and USA Today Network. I want to start with Georgia Verdier. Georgia, could you please tell us about your success?
Thank you, Dr. Coleman, and good evening, everybody. And thank you for having this program, Black Success in America and the Twin Tiers. I will attempt to give the viewers a brief overview of my long, rocky road to success. I will share a few bullets on my beginning, middle, and the present. In terms of my journey, I've concluded that life and success are not just about beginning, but rather, what do you do during your journey? My early development was fairly normal as I grew up in an average household with family members who were community activists, together with people who wanted to make a difference in the world. However, my personal journey has been paved with numerous trials, tribulations, joys, and sorrows. During my early stages of development, I closely observed the people around me, especially females. And I noticed that the jobs they were doing was service jobs, low-paying jobs, and they didn't even seem to get any recognition for their hard work and dedication. So it was disturbing to me, so I talked with my mom about that, and I told her that I did not want to function that way. And she told me that a good education could possibly be a passport to a successful future. So throughout school, I studied hard. I was an honor student. I remained focused on what I wanted out of life. However, there were some interruptions along the way. After high school, I met a young college graduate, and my mom was excited because she viewed him as a good catch, someone who would be able to support me financially. But thankfully, it didn't work out. Later, I began taking a few college courses, after which I met a college student who really interrupted my educational journey. We got married and had 2 children, yet I remained determined to accomplish my educational goals. My first educational accomplishment was to secure a CS degree, and that is a degree in common sense, which enhanced my ability to balance my load. I re-entered my college path with a full plate of responsibilities consisting of a family, part-time job, church duties, college courses, and financial limitations. However, I also had a glass full of determination. So I persevered. And over a period of years, I completed 2 master's degree programs, one in education with a concentration in psychology and the other in public administration. My educational accomplishments enabled me to work in the human services field with New York State Department of Mental Health for many years. During that time, I observed and experienced many discriminatory practices. During a period of that time, I managed a healthcare unit that had to be inspected by the state. And these were new units, so they were to be inspected after they were open for 1 year. And they were to be inspected on the date that they were open. My unit was not the first one to open, but my unit was the first one to be inspected. So first, I later learned that upper management did not believe that my unit would pass the inspection. So what they did, they had me go first because it was all the other managers were Caucasians, and they believed they could learn from my deficiencies. So we moved on. I tell you, some of the times I think about these things, it just kind of makes me a bit sad. But we have to learn how that even if people don't believe in you, you have to pursue and keep on moving and keep on keeping on. So that's what I decided to do. I knew I had to do what I had to do. And so I kept pursuing my college path with this full plate. And I was able to do what I needed to do in spite of circumstances. Upper management didn't believe that I possessed the skills to effectively do the job because upper management didn't know me that well. I refused to allow that type of behavior to place stop signs on my mind, steal my joy, or derail my mission. As most of my life, my interest has centered on being a change agent, hopefully turning negative behavior into positive change. During my working years, and after I have been able to travel throughout the United States and to many foreign countries, one special trip involved a journey to South Africa with a national congressional delegation to study relevant occurrences during that time, such as the aftermath of apartheid, economic development, and more. And during another occasion, I was invited to accompany a congressional delegation to Selma, Alabama, to do a commemorative walk across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in regards to the civil rights movement. So in spite of my humble beginnings, I was hanging out with some people in power. So I count that as an accomplishment. Other meaningful trips included China, Spain, Germany, Western North Africa, several mission trips to Hawaii, Jamaica, and more. Additionally, I have worked in the NAACP for decades, an organization dedicated to justice and equality for all mankind. I've also served as president for the local branch for many years. Public service and perseverance have resulted in my ability to receive such awards as Woman of Distinction, Woman of the Year, President's Award, Jefferson Award, an honorary scholarship establishing my name at Corning Community College, and more. However, most importantly, my foundation has been built on my faith in God, because without Him, my mind would have taken a leave of absence. As I close, I admit that my road has not been easy, as I encountered many potholes along the way. However, I was able to fill them with self-determination. Therefore, the sun has not stopped shining, as I have a beautiful family and one precious grandchild. So as I look back over my life and I think things over, I can truly say that I'm too blessed to be stressed and too anointed to be disappointed. And those are some points of my journey to success.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Georgia. One thing that listening to you, your life has been one of tenacity and accomplishment, never giving up, and making a difference, and so on. I think young people listening, you mentioned your education, your tenacity, never giving up, not really listening to the naysayers, and so on. So thank you for your sharing the story of your success, and each person will be sharing their success story, with 5 minutes or less, like Georgia just did, and then we're going to have a discussion. So, Georgia, thank you for that. I want to move on right now to Crystal Jubilee. Crystal has a very important job. She's Director of Nurse Education at Corning Community College. Crystal.
Thank you, Dr. Coleman, for having me. So my journey here began as a nurse in Philadelphia. I grew up originally from Philadelphia. My mother had me her first year of college, but she was determined that she was going to get her education because she was the first person in our family, her family, to go to college. So when, some people would have dropped out of college, she saw that education was a way to provide for herself and for me. And so from a very young age, I just knew education was important. I can remember as a child going to my mother's graduation at Cheney University. And so I just knew that was always a path, no matter what. My mother always instilled in me that education was important. And she was a teacher. And so that was really my foundation. And I grew up in the Philadelphia school system. And then I went to the University of Virginia, where I majored in sociology, but I was also a pre-med major. And then in my senior year, my grandfather got sick and he actually passed away. But I saw how the nurses interacted with him. I saw how he didn't have that advocate for him because my grandmother didn't have a healthcare background and no one in my family had a healthcare background. I always knew I wanted to help people. I had mentors in Philadelphia who were in healthcare, but at that point I decided that I wanted to be a nurse. I wanted to have more of that patient contact. So I graduated from the University of Virginia, and the next year I applied to a dual program at the University of Pennsylvania, where I got a bachelor's and master's in nursing and my nurse practitioner in gerontology. And I think the thing that's motivated me has always been when people have counted me out. And when I remember distinctly interviewing at the University of Pennsylvania, and I was told, don't put all my eggs in one basket because I did not have high GRE scores. And lo and behold, I got in the UPenn and I did well. And after that, I started working as a nurse, and then we transitioned up here, and the door to education just opened for me. Something that I wasn't even thinking about, honestly. When we moved here, I had interviewed at CCC just to work in their skills lab, and they called me afterwards and said, you're overqualified for this position. And so that kind of got me into education, and I worked at Arnett. And I think for me, because I had that foundation of education, that meant so much to me, being able to share the knowledge that I have to help educate future nurses, and also to have nurses that look like me in our community, because we are a minority in our community. And as I moved up the ladder and went into administration and became a director at CCC, it was really important for me to make sure people at the table were diverse, so that we can start to change our community, and we can start to change the perception of what people may have about other races and cultures, because the world is changing. So it's really important for us as healthcare providers to be able to reach back and take care of our community. So that's been really important for me as a nurse. I can honestly say I haven't had a path that's been up and down. I've had great mentors. I've had people who believed in me. I've sought out people who I could trust on my path, which I would tell young people: believe in yourself, work hard, study hard, show up, be authentic. That's the thing I think I've always been for myself, is authentic. I think growing up, and it could be a lot for all of us here as minorities, people try to like sometimes fit us into be a peg, and they want to put us in a circle because it's like, you need to talk a certain way, you need to dress a certain way. to fit what white America says. But I think over the years, it's like we've embraced our culture. We've embraced who we are. And I think that's been really important for me as a director, to be very authentic and be true to myself in my path of administration. I think that I'm a servant leader, and I care about the people that I lead. I'll go to battle for them, and I think they'll go to battle for me. So that's why I get so much out of my team. I enjoy what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I can't imagine myself doing anything else. I'm very blessed. I, stand on my faith, and I know God has gotten me where I am. I'm happily married. I have 3 children. I've been married for it'll be 27 years this year. 3 children, one's a nurse. Another is going to graduate from pharmacy school next year. And the other one is a nursing major at Villanova. So I can truly say life has been good to me. The community here has been good to me, and the people that I've associated myself with. So for young people that are looking to go into any type of career, just to work hard, surround yourself with people who will uplift you, who will believe in you, that you can trust, and that they'll trust you. And they'll give you the feedback that you need to grow, and they'll let you grow and let you lead.
Thank you, Crystal Jubilee. Some of the points you're making, you mentioned the importance of education. Georgia Verdier mentioned that. You mentioned authenticity, the importance of strength through diversity, having different folks at the table, and also your family. You mentioned family, so did Georgia Verdier. Success is not only measured, I think, in terms of professionally, but also one's personal life and family life. And you mentioned the importance of God, so did Georgia Verdier. So again, we're tonight on the 30th Political Pundit Night talking about Black success in America and the Twin Tiers. We've heard from Georgia Verdier, the Amira Corning NAACP president. We've heard just now from Crystal Jubilee, director of nurse education at Corning Community College. Now we're going to turn for a success story from Jerome Emanuel. Jerome is director of lending at the Alternatives Federal Credit Union and member of the New York State Regional Economic Development Council. Jerome Emanuel, good evening.
Good evening. As I said earlier before this went live, it's just an honor to be amongst all of you. In a lot of cases, I'm very humbled, just because I have a lot of respect for everybody on this panel. And I've learned something from all of you in even small ways. So some of you have been my mentors silently. So when we talk about, my success, the problem is that I don't feel successful. The reason that I don't feel successful is because I know where I need to go. I know what needs to happen. And I'm not there yet. I think as a society as a whole, Black America is not there yet. But I can also turn around and look to see, okay, when I got into this fight, which is much later than a lot of people on this panel, but when I got into this fight, I realized where I was. And now I can see where we are, but I still know where we need to go. So that's something that I think for young people to really understand is understand the reality of where you are, but what can you contribute to society to better for the future? Like, what is your personal contribution? So, I guess you could say maybe I'm on this panel because I've done things that people may have been afraid to do. I've done things that, maybe people have thought about doing, 3 or 4 times. And and listen, that's not me. That's my upbringing. That's my mother. That's my grandmother. Uh, they've always supported everything that I've ever tried to do, but they always told me, listen, like, don't let anybody tell you no. I don't have that formal education. I don't have the degrees upon the degrees upon the degrees, but I also understood that there's a system in place set up for that. And that's the path to success. And I can say that I've been able to maneuver around that path to get to where I want to go without that traditional path. It's not the only way, but I am a firm believer of education. My daughters, my son will go to college, all of them. My daughter is getting ready to be a nurse and go to nursing school. So shout out to Crystal. But it's my own personal vision. Like I can say, and I've always said this, if I die tomorrow, I lived a full life. I'm okay with that. That was in the plan. Like it was supposed to happen that way. But if I still have air to breathe, then we still have space to move. And there's still things that I think that I need to do. So with the blessings of my job, my profession, they've given me the availability to shine, to come out and to be able to do things that typically wouldn't happen. And for that, I'm forever grateful, because it just means that there's a mechanism in place that is able to, let's reverse redlining, like we can do that. Let's look at, Black-owned businesses that don't have money to get off the ground. We can do that. Let's help teach people how to manage their personal finances that aren't used to having finances, that aren't used to managing their finances because they haven't been taught. Why? Because the people that would teach them also didn't have money. We got to think about logic when we have, this kind of dialogue. So I'm looking forward to that, to that portion of the dialogue. There's a reason why we are where we are. And it's important to acknowledge the fact that, okay, there's a systemic reason for this. And then where do we go? And then how far have we come? So not to ignore everything that's happened before us, because, without a lot of people on this panel, we wouldn't be as far as where we are now. But what is in our power to do moving forward? And I think that that's where I'll find that success. I just don't feel it personally right now in this moment, because I feel like there's just so much more to do. But I know we'll get there.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerome. You're on the road to success. You're on the journey. You're determined. You're willing to take a risk that has punctuated your life. And thank you for sharing that. By the way, this is a wonderful panel of Black pundits talking about success. Somebody might say, well, Dr. Coleman, you're a white guy chairing this panel about Black success. Why are you doing this? Well, I think it's important. I think this is very important. I think young people can learn from the success of other folks. Also, I think that the white community, I think I can learn something. I think I can learn something about the Black experience by heading this panel. And I hope other members of the white community learn more about the Black experience and Black culture by viewing this evening. So that's why I'm doing this. This is an important topic. We're just ahead of Black History Month. It starts on Wednesday of next week. And it's great to have this panel at this time before Black History Month. By the way, I wanted to mention that the next Political Pundit Night, the 31st Political Pundit Night, will be Thursday night, March the 23rd. That's Thursday night, March the 23rd, exclusively mytwintears.com. Okay, at this point, I want to go on to the next success story here. Reverend Holly Strickland, she's pastor of the Webb Mills United Methodist Church. And Pastor Strickland I have a question for you. The question is, where were you on August the 28th, 1963?
Hello, everyone. Dr. Coleman, I was actually at a historical moment. I attended the March on Washington and actually heard the words from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's mouth saying, "I have a dream." I was very young, and I'm surprised that my parents gave permission for me to participate because it was a bus trip. It was actually sponsored by the local NAACP branches, and there were a lot of youth, and we had the adult chaperones for that bus trip. But what an amazing moment. And that's where I was. Yeah, taking in that historical moment, hearing those words, hearing Mahalia Jackson singing, and just amazing that it has been this long ago that that actually happened.
I relate to you, Pastor Strickland, because years ago, I was at Boston University as an undergraduate student, and we overlapped. We didn't know each other at Boston University. It's a huge school, but we overlapped freshman, first and second year. And so I have a lot of, I relate to you in a lot of ways and so on. But let's hear more about your success, Pastor Strickland.
Okay, well, thanks for this opportunity to interact with everyone on this illustrious panel as we approach Black History Month. I'm excited to share my story this evening. And it is a story that revolves around education. And I know that has been mentioned by the previous speakers. And it has really made a difference in my life, as well as books. And I'll tell you why in a minute. But teaching and learning has always been very important to me. And being born and raised in Elmira, I'm the oldest of 7 children. My parents, Tommy and Eva Williams, were amazing and gave us the best childhood that anyone could ask for. Soon after I was born, my father became the first African-American driver of the bookmobile with the public library system, Chemung County Library System, when it was still Memorial Library. And I don't know if who remembers Mr. Williams. He was also called, I see your hand, thanks. He was also called Mr. Bookmobile around the neighborhood. But in our childhood days, he traveled around the county and the streets of Elmira and brought the gift of books and knowledge to the community. He also went into the rural areas and elderly housing complexes or small schools that didn't have libraries, and was able to fill that gap. But for me, he was always bringing home these white canvas book bags that you see in the libraries, loaded with books. And he was an avid reader himself, so there were books for him in that canvas book bag. But he also would bring home children's books and stories that we shared. And he was a role model for reading and the importance of education. And whenever one of us children said we were bored or we even looked like we were bored, he would always respond by saying, "Go read a book." So you know what? We did. We had a world filled with books, and that was my beginning ticket to places of travel and learning about fashion, learning about biographies of different people, mysteries, you name it. All the genres were brought to our house to explore. And I learned a lot and decided at an early age that I wanted to become an English and reading teacher. because I wanted to help others learn to read and understand literature. So with role models in the church, with the school teachers in the Elmira School District, people in the community, Lewis Stark, Adon Allen, the Colemans, Mr. Blanford, English teacher, Mrs. Wilson. Many people were encouraging and believed in me and my dreams. I graduated from the University of Rochester after transferring from Boston University, became an English teacher, and I stayed for another year and earned my master's in education in curriculum writing and instruction. And being the lifelong learner that I am, I went back to college years later and earned a master's degree in education administration. So not only could I be in the classroom, but I could also be in administration as principal and assistant principal. Long story short, after many more years, I was called to ministry and I enrolled at Colgate Rochester Crozier Divinity School, where I earned a master's degree in divinity. So teaching and learning. I enjoyed 43 years of teaching and administrative work in middle school and high school, including Ernie Davis Middle School and Elmira Free Academy here in my hometown, Elmira. And once again, I'm continuing my lifelong journey of education as I complete my doctorate degree in ministry. So the path was set early on. My father always used to say that if you get an education, that's something that no one can take away from you. And I followed that and took that very seriously. There's a quote that Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King has it. He talks about education being, the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. And I think that is a balance that we need to look at and strive for as we teach our younger children. So every chance I get, I thank those who helped shape my future to who I am today, beginning with my parents as my first teachers, my school teachers along the way, and all those in the community. And what they did was to encourage me to keep learning, sharing my knowledge with others. And the learning legacy continues. My 5 children all graduated from colleges. They are responsible, mature adults. And now my 3 grandchildren, I have one who is a college sophomore at Florida AMU. That's Kennedy. I have a grandson, Emerson, who's a high school junior in Miami, and the youngest one is almost a year and a half, who is learning to read and sing and all those nice things that young children learn at that age. So I would just remind all of us that we can make a difference, and that if we keep going, if we believe in ourselves and persevere, we can achieve those goals and those dreams. And as adults and elders and mentors, let us do our share to encourage those who are coming up along by being a partner, by being alongside them, by sharing, like we're doing tonight, our stories for inspiration and encouragement. And just remember that it takes a village. In any way that we can help someone move forward or get in a better situation, then that's what we're supposed to do.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Holly. You're a great role model for young people, but also for everybody else. You're an inspiration. And I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your sharing your story this evening on Black success in America and the Twin Tiers, the 30th Political Pundit Night. I want to move on now to our next success story. Dr. Richard Dozier is an author, a commentator, and a former Corning Community College vice president. Dr. Dozier, good evening, and thank you for joining us on Zoom from the great state of Texas. Dr. Dozier.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Coleman. I appreciate it. I sort of in the same category as Jerome in terms of I don't really feel successful, or I'm still on that journey, on that way of making success. And one could say, well, you have a PhD in global leadership. Those were personal accomplishments. And what I'll say is, instead of success, I feel like I've made several accomplishments. And, I was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut, and part-time in West Palm Beach, Florida. And, always hearing that education is the key. Education is the way out of poverty. My parents were divorced. I'm the number 6 of 7 children. And actually the first to graduate college within my family. But if I want to say success, I give my success to, or credit of my success, not only to my parents, but to the HBCU that I attended, Hampton University. Because it was there at a HBCU that the nurturing that I needed, and that I saw that they were given to all the other students as well, in order to be successful, in order to achieve the degree. So I give a lot of credit to the HBCUs. Because here again, I worked for Hampton after I graduated and also received my master's. But then I went off to a giant land grant university. And here again, education is still trying to move up. It's very difficult. And at that time frame, minority affairs was one of the biggest areas that was coming on board. So therefore, I was able to go to University of Missouri, Columbia as minority affairs, where I did a lot of research working with the African-American students. And in fact, it was there that one of the things that I learned at Hampton was, in your position, learn other positions. And it was there at Missouri that I was working with internationals, not only with the African-American students or Black students, but with international students, student government, student activities. I got involved in all of those different areas. And as a result of that, I was able to put that on my resume, and I became an assistant dean of students at a university in the Northeast. And so my experience expands the land grant university, large university, to smaller colleges, as well as the historically Black college, and also the community college. And I won't forget when I went to Palm Beach. It was Palm Beach Community College at the time, but it's now Palm Beach State College. That was a college that my father, who grew up in Palm Beach, could not go to because of his being Black. And so, so he was really proud of me. Wow, my son's here, dean of students at a school I could not even go to because of the color of my skin. And so, and there I really fell in love with the community college, because I felt that the teaching and the nurturing of the students was really powerful, and it's what they needed. It was something that at the predominantly white institutions, Black students were not getting. And, and that's one of the reasons why I was there at the predominantly white institutions, because a lot of the Black students were coming saying, wow, we need a mentor. We need somebody of our color who can relate to us. When I was at Corning Community College, and in fact, in most of my career, I was the highest ranking Black person, if not the only Black person. When I was at Palm Beach Community, when I was at Corning, I was the vice president. I was the only Black person, well, one person who was a part-time custodian. And so, and there was also an African-American, Sky Moss, who's Black. But he was on a yearly basis. And so, but there I saw some, throughout my being in higher education. One of the things I'll go back and say about when we look at higher education, particularly our HBCUs, up until the 1950s and 1960s, the leadership was basically white because they didn't even trust we as Blacks to run our own institutions. Or, and here again, the board of trustees or governors, whatever they might want to call it, were always white up until the 1960s. And so, and when you think about it, it was in the 1940s that accreditation was first granted to a historically Black institution. And that was because the institutions had to sue them in order to get accreditation. And so it's in higher ed, we need more people of color to help with the students who were there, because they are having a very tough time with the administration. As an administrator, I've had a very tough time. It's no secret that when I left Corning, I ended up suing the institution because of racism. And it can be very difficult, but it's an area we need to really be in order to help the young people coming along. I encourage Blacks to go into higher education. My doctoral dissertation was on factors influencing the career decisions of African Americans at a predominantly white institution. Because my question was, why are we not going for the positions of dean, presidents, vice presidents? And even from my own experience of applying for positions, knowing that you're qualified, and oftentimes you get the call, and the call of, well, we want to do a telephone interview for you. And these institutions are just marking off the box of, okay, we fulfilled the requirement, we did interview a Black. And so you're never, you're lucky if you get called in for the interview as well. And I've seen that type of discrimination happening and saying, well, they didn't fit in. And so higher ed is a very difficult field, but we still need to make a lot of inroads into it. Right now, only from my research, only 0.01% of Black people have a doctorate degree. And so this is an area that really needs to be addressed and getting us more involved in education. Those that spoke before, indicated education. So it's extremely important that we get the education, and that we get a seat at the table. But also that problem is being recognized when you have that seat at the table, making your voice heard, and it oftentimes can be conflict from that, because as you're talking, you're seeing things from your point of view, your cultural standpoint of view, and others around the table cannot relate. They look at it as being inferior. So I did get my doctorate, my PhD. I won't forget. Actually, when I went to Corning, third day on the job, a young lady called and said, "Well, can I call you Richard?" I said, "I haven't even seen you face to face. I want to keep a professional relationship." And so, Dr. Dozier, there are those who refuse to call me Dr. Dozier. And so you run into those kind of obstacles, but it's like grinning and bearing it and continuing on, pushing on.
Dr. D, thank you for sharing that. By the way, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people watching right now. And the letters HBCU, there are folks watching that may not know what HBCU means. So Dr. D, HBCU, what do those letters stand for?
Historically Black College and Universities.
Okay, and I appreciate people watching. Hopefully, if you didn't know what an HBCU was, you know what it is now. And that's one of the great things about Political Pundit Night and these programs. They're educational in nature. Education, you learn something new every day. Dr. Dozier, question for you. You mentioned that you sued Corning Community College for racism. And people watching might be thinking, well, what was the outcome of that lawsuit? Could you comment on that?
Yes. Oh, well, because my filing was late, I did not, my case was dropped because of the late filing. But I have documentation where, and you know, people were saying, oh, only black students, white students are afraid to go to his office because all the black students are hanging out there. And some very, very ugly things were said that I had never come up against myself professionally or personally. And because I was also having some physical issues in terms of kidney stones, I just decided that it was best for me to depart.
Well, I thought you were a great representative of Corning Community College. You were on a program I was doing, a TV program.
Yes.
Called Coleman and Company. It was a TV show. You were a panelist and you were on frequently. And one thing I really admired, you always said what was on your mind. You didn't hold back. You weren't afraid to be controversial. You know, sometimes in life, people will say, well, don't be controversial. Don't say something that may offend someone intellectually because that might hurt you. But, you know, I found that people that aren't afraid, that are self-confident like you, you can be yourself. You can be you. You can say things and be honest with yourself and others. Be authentic. That was a word that Georgia Verdier used earlier in the program, authentic. And I think, Dr. Doze, you're authentic.
Thank you very much. I try to be. Thank you very much. And I always enjoyed Coleman and Company. I enjoyed Pundit nights here as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks. I want to thank all of you being here on the Political Pundit Night, the 30th one. And, you know, there's a lot of folks that work on Political Pundit Night behind the scene, and I just want to mention them. I think it's they deserve some credit. Dave Sorensen is the key person at WETM Television. He's there tonight. Thank you, Dave. And working his magic. Lisa Sturtevant helps tremendously with the promotion of this program. Josh Kramer is a technical guru. He's the czar of TV technology, Josh Kramer. Thank you, Josh. And James Turpin, I want to thank James Turpin. He's the relatively new news director at WETM Television. And James Turpin, for you folks watching, he is the real deal. In fact, he sent something to everybody in this panel and said, hey, have any ideas for Black History Month for the TV station? That was tremendous. And it's good to have someone like James Turpin as news director at WETM TV. And there's another person I want to recognize is George Castanuber. He's the assignment managing editor, the managing assignment person at WETM News. And he's been in the business, I think about 40 years. He knows his stuff. He knows people. He knows subjects. He does a great job. And one thing that the people at WETM do is they get young people coming in that are out of college, you know, and they get their first break at WETM. And many of them have gone on to bigger and better things. And so I think to some degree, WETM is an educational institution. You know, for many years I was a professor and dean and academic vice president. Well, WETM, in its own way, is kind of an academic institution training folks that graduate with degrees in journalism and communications that then spend a couple of years at WETM, and then the sky is the limit. Let's go Zoom. We're on Zoom, but the sky's the limit, and so forth. So I want to thank all the people at WETM. I also want to thank another person, Dennis Sweeney. He is the executive director of Coleman and Company, cybercasting with something to say. And I want to thank Dennis Sweeney for everything he does and all the work he puts in to the Political Pundit Nights. The next success story, we're talking about success tonight. We're celebrating success. We're celebrating accomplishments. And a person that personifies success and accomplishments she's also a very talented musician, is Anita Lewis. Anita Lewis is the Chief Development Officer of the Economic Opportunity Program. Anita, thank you so much for joining the group this evening for the subject of Black success in America and the Twin Tiers. Anita.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is such a great panel as I see everybody on the panel and hear their stories. And so really, when you talk about success, my story is really, my community is my story. I'm a native of Elmira. I grew up here. I went to Southside High School. I was, one of those kids that was always in everything. I participated really in a lot of clubs, even in junior high. And I was really a kid that was, I was very protective of others. I would always come to bat, go to bat, for whatever reason, and, be involved and, really just, like working with, kids and, of my own age, when I was in grade school, and really was a leader. I think I recall, I had never seen, as a little kid, you never really see your record. And I think I was probably in 6th grade and I got an opportunity to see some of my kindergarten and 2nd grade and 3rd grade record. And I'll never forget, it was said, she's a leader. I had never seen that before. And I was like, oh, and on my report cards, it was always, she's a leader and she this and that, So I was always that way in school. So I came through Elmira City School District, elementary school, high school, and, did a lot of modeling and wanted to do fashion and that, all of that. And, coming out of high school, was going to have a little one. So that just turned my whole boat around. And so, in having a little one, that was my first education of having a child with a disability, which is he is now 44 years old. And he does really, he's really high functioning, where he's in the Arkashamong, one of the group homes at Ladderbrook Road in Horseheads. His name is Brian. And so he was my first lesson. So I knew I was determined, because I always used to see all the professional people in my community. And I wanted to be this professional person. And I always worked in an office in the summer. And I really took my education very seriously in high school. I learned how to type. I learned how to answer phones. I learned how to do all that. So as part of my toolkit, when I had to kind of turn myself around, coming out of high school, I was going to college, and it's like, nope, not doing that. I couldn't leave my little guy. So I stayed here. So, obviously God had another plan for me to stay here. So I'm here. I was here. And so I knew I had to get a job, and I had to work. And I worked in offices. I worked in many offices. So I didn't go to college right away. I tried that, and it just didn't work. I took some classes, and it was very difficult of the journey that I had to take, because I had this little one. So I worked in offices. I had to, kind of make my way, and I always got promoted. I always got promoted through my experience and my education and what I knew from what I learned in high school and how to operate in an office in a professional setting. But I could never get over the hurdle. It was always, oh, she doesn't have an education. Oh, she doesn't have a degree. That was always the excuse. Always. So I'm like, okay. So I had to get my education. So I wound up later on, I was probably almost 40. And so I got my bachelor's degree in business administration through the University of Phoenix, while I had my second little one, which she is now 22, sitting next to my side as I was doing my schoolwork, and she was right there doing her own. And so I got my bachelor's degree in 2007. And then I kind of took a little break, but all of the time I have been promoted. I've had 3 jobs since I graduated high school. So I've been at 10 years. At each job, I've been here at EOP for 22. So the longevity and, just really learning the work ethic really from my mom, my dad. I have 2 parents that, worked at probably in the same job for 38 to 40 years. They're in the same place. My father worked in the city of Elmira. My mom worked in a factory. So, my education around working hard, work ethic, that took me through to every job that I've ever had. But I did get my master's degree in 2013. I got an MBA in management. So I've been here at EOP. I've been promoted, through the years. And, I like helping people in my community. That's why I sit at the table, at a lot of different boards and committees, and I commit. I don't just sit at the board. I commit, because you need to commit so that you're at the table. So when you need to, go to bat for somebody, I like working with people. I've, worked with many people, trying to get their degrees, anything that I can do, it's a hand up. It's not a handout. That's what we do here at EOP. Still working with kids, and I think with young people, we've had some, they've had some challenges with COVID and social emotional and that phone, and some of that has really deterred some of their outlook and their social, skill. And I always tell even some of the young people that I work with, you can do anything you want to do. Don't get derailed by the teachers or the racism that you may feel, because it's so in your face right now. We're talking about it. It's, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's there. And so, not having some of our young people of color get derailed by, I don't like this person, because I'm like, get your education and get out. Get what you got, get what they want to give you. So that's always been my platform with my daughter, and it's like, take the knowledge that they have for you and do what you need to do with it. So, my success and my journey is just, I'm very humble around, I guess, my success, because I know I can help other people. I know, because I'm sitting at the table, that I can, work alongside of other people. I can educate even some of my colleagues and my peers, because I'm very honest, and it's like, ask me the question. I will answer your question. I'm like Georgia. Let us educate you, and hopefully you're open enough to understand what I'm telling you. And if you need to ask me another question, ask me another question, because I'll answer your question as long as you keep asking them, so that until I think that you can get it. So, my success and, my journey has been one that, I've learned about people with disabilities. I've, even with some of the young mothers, and it's so difficult. Yeah, it is. But you know what? It's never too late. It is never too late to go to school. It's never too late to turn yourself around and just get moving. It's never too late. I don't care, I don't care how old you are. I started singing in a band when I was 40, I'm 62. I absolutely love it. I have a blast. And it's the second other person that I get to be, because I didn't get to be the first person before I got turned around. So it is never too late to do anything you want to do. So I think everybody, even some of these folks on this panel that I've had the opportunity to work with, to share with, to talk to mentor with, I value all of it. The white people that have been in my path, the Black people that are in my path, what I've learned even about my own race as I've grown and gotten older. And, going back to what Jerome said about going back, go back and look at, what was happening for us and the DNA that's in our DNA going forward. That's why we're seeing some of what we're seeing, because what's happening back there, some of that is right here still. It's very present. It's very present. No excuse. No, that was then. It's like anybody else's DNA. Your DNA is your DNA. I don't need to be related to Holly or Crystal or Georgia to know what's in our DNA, because we've all experienced it in one way or another. Racism, I experienced it when I was a kid. I could tell you the times I used to cry because I wanted what that little girl had or the opportunity that she had. And I finally saw it as I got older. I'm like, oh, that's what that was. But I didn't see any different because I was right there alongside of them, playing just as talented as they were, but didn't get the opportunity. So I see that now, and it's okay because I'm still doing what I want to do and sharing what I want to do and sharing and hopefully expanding on others what they can do too. And if somebody won't let you do it, come and see me, because I'm gonna walk with you so we can go check it out and see why not. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you.